Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, your podcast for all things gardening and homesteading. With me as always is my co-host, David Poole, owner of Mid-County Farm and Feed. And I'm here always, the guy who asks the questions, who's not nearly as much of an expert, Aaron here. It's really hot outside. It is the middle of August. We have not had a named storm come through and dump, all kinds of water on us yet. And it feels a lot like a drought.
It does.
So I think that's what I'm going to ask you today. What am I supposed to do in my yard, in my garden, when we're in a drought? What do we do when there's drought conditions? Hey, what is a drought?
There's all kind of a drought. There's a different way to look at a drought. A drought is whenever water demands exceed available water. So there could be there's all kinds of different things that could happen. It could be meteorological. I can't say that word.
Meteorological.
Yes.
Yeah.
Weather related, where like the weather conditions change. So right now for us, it's been crazy wet.
Yeah.
And then a week ago it quit raining. It was super wet, and now it's dusty outside.
Yeah, and it switched so quickly. That's
typically what happens here. Characteristically, not every year, but most years, right around August, it goes from overly wet to catastrophically dry, right, short amount of time.
Speaking on water, we kind of have a feast and famine here, right? Real wet, like you said, and then real dry.
Yeah. And so while the weather is really unpredictable here, you never know what's going to happen. But if we continue on this trend, like our forecast here is calling for, last I looked, it was another potential week of dry weather, and the heat index is over 100. It's super hot outside, and things are drying up really, really quickly. It's one of those times you can't water the garden enough. We are going to exceed the amount of water we need.
We're going to use so much water, right?
We're not going to have enough naturally occurring moisture. And while some places, we can water, there's other parts of the country like California, you can't even have certain types of plants because they're water heavy requirements.
That's a funny thing over there. Yeah, you'll get a $500 fine if you water your lawn, but if you're a nut tree grower in Bakersfield, you can legally use 17 times the amount of water that anybody else is. But that's here nor there.
It's interesting, and we're starting to see, water issues here in Texas. So, I know like in the
everybody else wants our water.
I think it's like in the Corpus Christi area, they're starting to see water shortages.
Actually, I just read that. That was a news story where Corpus Christi was the first municipality to run out of water in like the past 35 years or something.
So it's not only just about like natural occurring water with rainfall. It's about the accessibility to water in general. So
that means rivers and streams.
So there's lots of factors that could happen. The weather could be great here, and, we could be getting plenty of rain, but some of the water might be coming from farther north upstream, rivers, creeks, and those things dry up, and they basically increase the amount of available water that's used for all types of activities that might be needed on the homestead.
So a drought is really, it's system-wide, right? It can be regional, and it can come down to your yard. Yeah.
It's not just rainfall.
When we
start losing water and we go through a drought, the soil is one of the first things to suffer. And when we look from a homesteading perspective, whether you're just like the small, like middle of the city, urban type homestead, to like somebody who maybe lives in this area that lives on the outskirts of town that have acreage. Yeah. Maybe they have livestock. That water shortage impacts the soil, and those soil impacts lead to effects everywhere.
Yeah, because that impacts the grass that your livestock grazes on.
So it leads to ensure that you have a plan in place to be prepared. It's just like for us being prepared for a categorized storm, a hurricane, you've got to be prepared for a lack of water.
Yeah.
Whether
Okay.
it come from, tomorrow the well could dry up on an area with acreage here. We could lose water pressure here, and then we no longer have the ability to water the plants or maybe the backyard livestock as accessible as we did before. Maybe it's not safe for drinking for livestock and so on. So there's all kinds of factors that play in to droughts. But, for the average gardener, it comes down to soil health, and it couples really well with our last episode on cover crops. We talked about soil being the one thing that's impacted the most.
Right. Yeah.
It begins to become barren. Plants and ground covers.
And goes from soil to dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plants begin to die. A lot of times people in, populated areas, they start to see the effects, or that they start looking at drought when they start seeing the visual effects.
Right. Right.
The
brown grass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brown grass is the first thing. That's the number one thing people are worried about whenever we start seeing a drought. And by the point in time you're seeing that, it's not because it's because we've been going through a prolonged period of water, and then you couple.
It's like your body having a fever. Once you get the fever, you've been sick for a while. You're just now seeing the symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so you've got to start looking ahead and start recognizing the symptoms and paying attention to the weather patterns, and in general have a backup plan. And there's a lot of different ways that you can combat a drought. The most well-known is water storage.
So that you mean like a pond, like a water tank?
Yeah, if you live out on the outskirts of town around here, a lot of places have, even on a 1 to 2 acre plot, they may have a small pond.
Mm-hmm.
They have accessible water available for livestock. They have it where they could utilize it to water other things if they had the ability to pump it.
If they have a generator pump or a submersible pump. Mm-hmm.
No matter how big your setting, we could always be thinking ahead, and we could be collecting water with rain harvesting.
Like a cistern?
Yeah, we could have different water storage tanks, whether it's like from a small scale, like if we're just a small gardener, maybe we have some daisy chained 55-gallon drums on a gutter. Maybe we have one in the front, one in the back, strategically located around the areas where we have valuable plants that we're trying to grow for harvest. And then we can utilize that and be able to put that back into the garden when we have a water shortage.
That seems like it'd be a handy thing to utilize even when you're not in a drought.
Absolutely.
Right? You're lowering your water bill.
You're getting higher quality water.
Right, because it's rainwater. It's not municipal water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think thinking as a responsible, environmentally ethical practice, if everyone has a way to capture rainwater and have a backup, I think that it's a simple thing.
Isn't it like against city codes in a lot of places to
different states in Texas? I don't believe that it is, but there are areas across the country where you cannot capture rainwater.
What's that? That seems kind of silly, doesn't it?
I don't know the reason behind it.
Is that it must be like an all-in type of thing. They must feel like if they're spending money on the systems that are required by a municipal water company, then no one can be outside of that.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's all in. That must be it, but I don't know. I digress.
You ever watch the Lorax?
Yeah. He speaks for the trees.
Yeah, he speaks for the trees.
He speaks for the trees.
Everybody's got to buy air.
Yeah. Yeah.
So same thing.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
I think there's a lot of simple ways. Yeah, and at the end of the day, for most of us, it would be very impossible potentially to have enough water. But if we're going to have even a backyard flock of chickens, if we're going to have a sizable garden, responsibly, we should have some backup way to be able to maintain that. And
because you'll be in trouble if you don't.
Yeah, because without water, we have a dead flock of chickens. Without water, we can't safely fill a stock tank to water a herd of goats or cattle, or even if you have, working animals like horses. all those things are vital.
Yeah. I'll tell you something too. If you can't water your eggplant and it dies, that's not really that big of a deal. But I think this is 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at this point. I'll tell you this little story, this anecdote about drought. We didn't get rain for a month and a half 2 years ago. It was from mid-July to all the way to the end of August, and there was absolutely no rain at my house. And I have 2 live oaks in my front yard, very large live oaks. They require a lot of water. I didn't put a sprinkler out, right? And you know what happened? My main water line from the municipal supply that goes right into my house, it runs through those trees. Those trees' roots reached out and grabbed that. They felt the vibration of that water. I don't know how they did it. They just detected it. And they busted it up to quench their thirst. And it cost about $1,800 to fix that line. So those trees got desperate in that drought.
And so it kind of brings me to a different approach to, drought here is inevitable. It's going to happen, but thinking the best way that we can protect ourselves, we can collect water, but ideally we could probably never have enough storage tanks big enough to hold enough water to take care of us for an extended period of time. Like we can fill a 55-gallon rain drum with 10 minutes of rain here, and the types of rain that we get. So,
sure, yeah, you can.
But in order to sustain for a month or a month and a half, and if we get under water restrictions where we have to limit our use of water, which responsibly we should do to the best of our ability, thinking as much storage as we can eliminate that, but also thinking soil conscious.
Sure.
The best water storage facility in any landscape, any yard, any homestead is the soil itself.
Okay.
So
it doesn't just run out the bottom and go to the water table?
You do, but like if you're replenishing groundwater, then you have accessibility for well water. You can get groundwater, and that groundwater, if it's accessible and you have good soil and it's storing it, then you can go through times of drought with access to ground storage. But if you don't take care of the soil and you're not following good soil practices, and we have compacted soil, if we have a lot of bare soil, then we're not actually going to get water to move through that soil.
Because it'll just run off.
It's going to run off.
Right, that makes sense, yeah.
So I think that you have to really look at like how you approach that, thinking soil covered. Cover crops if you're planting road gardens or large scale areas to make sure that you're keeping the soil active, keeping biomass, you're keeping it broke open so that water can move through it, and that you're keeping it alive with microbial activity, because it's essentially allowing that water to move in there and act as a sponge.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Good soil is like a sponge. Yeah.
Because without being able to store water in the soil, even temporarily in the top layers, then you have things like trees and turf grass and ground covers competing against each other. You go through a drought, the tree's going to push roots to wherever it can find water. It's going to try to access what it needs.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what happened to me. Yeah. It sought out the water.
You gotta look at it from that perspective. If you're taking care of the soil, while it's not foolproof and it's not going to prevent the effects of the drought,
sure,
going to increase the ability for plants and even like pasture grasses to be able to sustain themselves longer. The Microlife Company always puts out a lot of information every year in summer about utilizing humates.
What is that?
They're like humic acids.
Okay.
And basically it's carbons, and they're putting out these carbons into the soil, and it's essentially doing some of the same activities that compost might do. It's not compost. It's not, but it's, you look at like compost is putting organic matter back into the soil. Carbon is
organic matter.
It's a life source, and you're putting that organic material back into the soil. And you can see oftentimes they'll have pictures of places where they'll have areas that are treated consistently with humates and areas that are not. And the areas that do, turf grass is widely used with it. It's greener, longer in times of drought.
With humates.
The soil has more water holding
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So it just goes to show you, if you're taking on good soil practices and you're not just doing the bare minimum, that you can increase the ability for a plant to survive longer during times of a drought.
Yeah. So basically what I feel like we're talking about this entire episode is mitigation, right?
Yeah.
Drought's going to come. It's an inevitable fact of life. So these are all the different ways that we can mitigate the drought.
Absolutely. And you can, depending on if your garden is not edible, for instance, maybe you just have a ornamental garden, being selective about the species that you put in that are drought tolerant. So sticking to native species that are acclimated to the conditions of the zone and the microclimate we're in, that can help you survive through a drought and reduce your need for excess water.
Isn't that what a xenoscape is? I just learned that word.
It's like your landscaping essentially for, minimal water use.
Minimal watering, xenoscaping. Yeah, I was reading through. I guess everybody knows where we are now, but we'll really pinpoint us on the map. But I was reading through Beaumont's comprehensive plan the other day, and it was a big portion. I was reading through, and it was very interesting. But was on all of the public properties that Beaumont maintains was installing xenoscapes, right? So they don't have to use a lot of water. Yeah, that was really interesting thumbing through.
And it's we're capturing water. We're planting like water conscious species. Also planting deep root crops or things that have deep roots, which help open up the soil and allow deeper water infiltration. But even on a more simple and elementary, goes back to like one of our fundamental episodes way back in. That's like the fundamentals of watering. Well, we're moving into this time of year. You have to water smarter.
Yeah, you can't just be spraying up in the air with the shower.
Drive around your neighborhood and find the one guy who's got the sprinkler going on at noon.
Yeah.
Or 1 p.m.
60% of that's like evaporating.
You can physically see
it.
It's like a mirage. You can see it evaporating.
You see all the rainbow. It's all in the air. It's all in the sky.
You want to water early on in the day, in the morning time, before it gets hot, because you're allowing that water to slowly soak in. You're allowing for the soil to absorb it like a sponge. And if you're deep watering, you're getting water deeper into the soil, and you're allowing those plants to have access to water before the stressful time of day comes on.
So that being said, you saying that in terms of how we water, does that mean that you think that drip irrigation and soaker hoses are better than sprinklers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially like in a ornamental, like landscape beds and around fruit trees, around your vegetable garden areas, or perennial beds. Like drip irrigation is intentional water usage. So you're putting out a small amount
to that spot
directly to the soil, and you're putting it out what I like to call the low and slow method. It's not just like pouring out all at one time. You're giving it a chance to like slowly seep into the soil and get deeper.
Yeah.
You can also do, when you get into the hot summer, if you've got large areas that need water, you can cycle. You run your irrigation system for a little bit.
Sure.
And let it like soak in, and then you come back, let it rest, and then you come back an hour later, and maybe you give it a little more.
Yeah, because a lot of plants don't like being constantly wet. There's a lot of plants that just don't like wet feet.
And when you water too much at one time, especially in clay soil, the pores of the soil fill up, and then the excess water runs off.
It runs off, yeah.
Whereas if we water a little bit, let it soak in, let it absorb, and then we water a little more, we're going to get deeper watering.
That makes sense, yeah.
And your plants will love you for it.
I've also seen these things are kind of making a comeback. It's kind of it's a really, really old technology, but it's these clay vessels that and you plant those in there, and then you fill that up, and the water slowly goes through because it's, a permeable thing.
It's a great option for people that grow a lot of like container grown.
Yeah, that's what it's usually like. I see it. People will put it in like the middle of a raised bed or two in there, and it's a pretty cheap option. I like it. I think I'm gonna try to experience.
So we actually just got some recently because we had 2 pots in the back that have some elephant ears in them. I don't want them in the ground because I want to be able to contain them, and they're in the back, and they get the hot afternoon sun, and we just would forget about them. We wouldn't
And they're
water them enough.
And they're water-loving plants. That's why they grow in the ditches,
And
because they
so
want all the water in the
we
world.
put those in there, and now they're thriving better than ever because they're getting
They're having
consistent-
a consistently wet
Yeah.
soil. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's a great example of the proof of like just
And those are
slow water.
those are better, and I feel like they're a little bit more efficient than what's been around for a long time, and those are pretty popular. Is the globes you fill up and turn upside down and put them in there. Those are cool too. But I think the berry clay ones, what'd you call them?
Olas.
Olas. I think you're right. I don't know.
Yeah, the central clay is porous. So, there's a reason why people don't have clay sewer lines anymore.
Yeah, well, and also
We'll definitely get into that.
they root in there.
Yeah.
Those roots, man, they find it. I'm telling you, they found my main line and just like, I need all that water. Give it to me. I water those trees now. If it's been about like a week and a half without any rain, I go outside and I water those trees now because I don't want that happening again.
You have to think about the full picture because everything on a homestead needs water. Livestock, garden plants, ornamental plants. The compost pile needs water.
It does, yeah, because if it stays dry, then it's not composting at all.
Yeah, it's not going to be microbially active.
Yeah.
So everything needs water, and so you've got to look at all these aspects. And depending on your setup, in non-municipal areas like outside of like
in the county,
county areas, making sure that when you're preparing for droughts, like if you're using pumps or like well pumps, maintaining them, keeping sure that they're functioning. If you are using some type of an irrigation system for whatever you're growing, does it work properly? Actually, physically making sure you're constantly inspecting them and you're not wasting water with leaks and drowning out plants. And then when the time comes, you're not getting adequate water when you need it, when it's available to you.
Right.
Or maybe you have water storage and you've got a leak and you've wasted all your stored water because you didn't actually check prior to and plan ahead for, events like this, because you never know whether you're going to get a drought.
Well, the thing is I know that we will get a drought.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to get a drought, but I can tell you right now that you're always going to eventually have a drought. So if there's one thing I learned from this episode, it's plan for it because it's going to happen. It's an eventuality, right? Because weather is unpredictable, but we always know that certain things will happen at some time.
Yeah. One thing before we wrap up today that just a little side note here, but
I love a good sidebar.
We think about drought and the effects like on a homestead, no matter the size, how it affects us and the things that we have.
Yeah.
But those same conditions apply to wildlife.
Oh yeah, of
they
course.
apply to pollinators. We go through a drought, nectar and
plummet.
Exist.
Right.
Because if a plant can't have the moisture and the resources it needs to be able to produce it, then the pollinator, section of the little ecosystem we're creating no longer has access to what it needs. If we're going through a drought and we don't have good habitats and spaces set up for things like amphibians.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You really think about it, like there's a lot to it.
There is a lot to it.
It's not just about us. Birds, mammals, all kinds of wildlife are out there trying to nectar and access water. And so we're creating these spaces.
That's why I have a bird bath, man.
Yeah.
That's why I have a little bird bath in my yard.
We're creating these spaces. We have to be mindful of everything else because it's not all about us.
Yeah. Well, it's all a system, and we all live in the system. We forget about that every day because we live in these little boxes, and we go outside maybe once or twice a day, and we forget what it's like. But we live in a system, and droughts are eventually going to happen. Storms are eventually going to happen. We just have to plan ahead.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, thanks for letting me know everything there is to know about droughts. I think I know it all now. I don't have to know anything else about droughts. And hopefully you do too, and we'll see you back here next time.
Nectar and